Assalamu alaikum, everybody. How are you all?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. In case you guys are new, my name is Layla, okay? And I wouldn't really be here because I'm going to go play with my doll.
Layla today has a snow day, although it's not snowing. It's very bad weather, so they don't take the kids to school on such days because it's dangerous weather conditions, so she's off today.
And tell us if you went to the other live session last Tuesday, and we said that I'm going to have school next time. We wasn't really lying. We just said, that we didn't have any school because we didn't know that today was going to be a snow day. So, yeah.
Anyway, if you have let us know where you're from in the comments. Every Tuesday I do these live sessions, usually without Layla because she's at school. But you can join me every Tuesday around this time, maybe a little bit earlier, as we discuss Tuesday thoughts, important things that have happened, or spiritual tips and things like this. As we are approaching Ramadan, I'm just sharing this to our group, 1 second. As we are approaching Ramadan, we are doing a series called Spiritually Preparing for Ramadan, where I'm going to give you habits, bad habits that you should stop, and good habits that you can learn to do more of. Because, Ramadan, we want to make the best of it as much as possible, and get as many rewards as possible as well. So that is really important. So this is a new series that we started last week, and if you go to the videos on our Facebook page, you will see my last one, which was about how to stop backbiting. This week we're going to discuss a very important thing as we approach Ramadan, but even out of Ramadan, and that is making prayer a daily habit. I'm just writing this for the group, and then I'm going to give you my full attention. So, Assalamu alaikum, Diane. How are you doing from New Hampshire, where it is 15.6 degrees Celsius? Wow, it's quite warm there. Here, I think it's slightly above zero, but we did have freezing rain earlier, hence why Layla's not at school today. Yeah, so I'm gonna, I have 6 comments here and I can't see them all, so I'm trying to refresh, so do bear with me. So let's get on then. So as we are approaching, if I don't say anything, it's because I can't see your comments. I'll just try and refresh from my phone and see if I can see them from there. So we are approaching Ramadan. We are now in the month of Rajab, and we don't have many weeks to go at all before Ramadan. Ramadan is going to be around the 24th of, April, give or take. Okay. Yeah. So we need to get spiritually prepared for that, inshallah, as much as possible. So, as I said, I've been doing a new series, started last week, called Spiritually Preparing for Ramadan, and you can join me every Tuesday at around a similar time for these sessions. And last week, we discussed how to stop backbiting. This week, we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is making prayer a daily habit. Now, as you know, in Ramadan, we all get more religious, and we all get more spiritual, and we all get more good at certain things during Ramadan, including prayer. But if you're not making a daily habit of it before, you may suddenly feel it's a lot to take on as we start Ramadan, and you don't want to be missing prayer. You shouldn't miss prayer at all, but you definitely don't want to be missing prayer in Ramadan. So we should start from now. So if you know that you are lacking a little bit in this area, the best thing to do is start trying to improve it from now. Assalamu alaikum, Omar from London, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, Rizal from Indonesia. So how can we do this if you are, or if sometimes, you know, we are human, and yes, it's not, sometimes we can miss a prayer, or we are late, or we might pray after Maghrib, you know, things like this. Life gets in the way sometimes, and, you know, we're human, we all do it. We may all strive as hard as we can to pray every single prayer on time, and may Allah help us all do that. But for some people, it can be really difficult, especially for new Muslims or those of us just starting to pray. So in the Quran, in Al-Baqarah 43, so 243 in the Quran, Allah says, and establish prayer and give zakah and bow with those who bow in worship and obedience. So, of course, we all know that prayer is fundamental in our religion. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's the second, actually. And it's the very first thing we are going to be asked about on the Day of Judgment. So it's really important to try and perfect it as much as possible. Again, we are human. Things happen, and not all the time can we manage it. Salam alaikum, Angela from Scotland. How are you doing, sister? Salam alaikum, Akbar. How are you doing, brother? I found that it's not updating for some reason on the laptop. So if I do give you a shout out a bit delayed, I apologize. So the prayer, of course, is the first thing we're going to be asked about. It's something that we are all commanded to do at least 5 times a day. We have to do it 5 times a day. And then obviously if you do the sunnah prayers, then that's more hasanat for you, alhamdulillah. But what about if you're struggling? And let's face it, many of us do struggle with the daily habit of prayer. So here are 6 tips to give you. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about prayer. We offer prayer to detach ourselves from the world and to worship Allah, and to stop and think about Allah, and to give him our love, affection and thanks. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Mahmoud from Egypt. MashaAllah, how are you doing? So it's really important to remember that when we are trying to get into the regular habit of praying, it's really important to remember that, you know, for those few minutes we pray to Allah on whichever prayer, we are detaching ourselves from the physical world and building up our akhirah in the next life, inshallah. So it's really important. It demonstrates our belief in Allah, and of course it gives time for us to reflect and focus on our existence and on anything that we may want to ask Allah as well during the prayer, of course. So it's really important to do. Modern life can often mean we get very busy and, you know, working, or if we're in college studying, or if we are commuters going from one place to another, especially, you know, if you are living in big cities, or maybe you're living outside a big city, but you work inside the city, so you have to commute on a daily basis to work. Sometimes that can coincide with one of the prayers. It can make it hard. By the time you're home, you can feel frustrated and you need to relax a little bit. And, you know, these things happen that you can completely forget to pray, or you pray late, or it happens. We are human and this happens a lot. So we do need to take a break from that stress though. So Allah has told us to take time out 5 times a day at set times so that we can worship him. Abdullah ibn Shaqiq al-Ukaili, and I hope I said the name right, my Arabic is not great, reported, the companions of Allah, of Allah's messenger, Allah's praise and peace be upon them, did not consider the leaving of any action to be kufr or unbelief, except the prayer, salah. And that is reported in the hadith by At-Tirmidhi 2622. So we can forget to pray charity. We can, pay charity. We can forget to pay charity. We can maybe sometimes forget our manners. We can sometimes forget to fast. Sometimes, you know, we might not be able to afford Hajj, even though we're healthy, all these things. But the thing that Allah will look upon as disbelief or unbelief is if we stop praying, if we leave the action of praying altogether. So it's really important to really develop good habits for this, inshallah. May you always be blessed, Rizal. Ameen. And Rizal says he hopes all of us will always be blessed. Jazakallah khair for that. Beautiful dua. So we shouldn't belittle or downsize the prayer. Even if you're struggling with it, don't put it as if it's a low priority. It should be a top priority, and you should put that in your head. Even if you're struggling with it, even if you're new to Islam and you're not sure yet, just remember the prayer is a priority. No matter what you do in your day, you really have to focus and try as much as you can to pray every single prayer on time as much as possible. It can be an ongoing battle for many, and may Allah help all of us to develop the routine of prayer and remain firm. This is the key. So maybe we develop it, we're good at it, we become good at it, but then we have to keep going at it. And, sometimes it's hard. As I said, if you're commuting every day from work, or maybe you are in an important business meeting, or maybe you... it's nothing even to do with work, you might just be ill. So, all these things can make us forget or take away the passion sometimes to really follow the prayer as strictly as we can. And we can just feel like, it's us, but I don't feel very well, I'll just have a little nap, so I'll pray after. All these things can happen. So we need to improve that kind of thinking. Just remember that Allah never gives any of us more than what we can handle, and He says that in the Quran. Allah does not change a soul except with that within its capacity. So basically, He has prescribed to us 5 daily prayers. So at certain times, He could have made it really hard. And He could have said to us, right, I want you to pray 5 times a day, but I want all of them at the end of the day. Now you imagine, and I did this as a new Muslim because I was afraid in the beginning to pray at work, because I was at that time unsure of what to say. No one really knew I was a Muslim, and it was really difficult. And many new Muslims go through this, by the way. So what can we do? Or what many of us do is we try and pray them all at once. So you imagine that you are in a job, and it might not even be a stressful job, but you're working at least 8 hours a day. You're then going home, and that can take, if you don't live near home, it can take a while sometimes, especially if you're living in a big busy city. And you imagine then having to pray all 5 prayers after that. You'll be tired, you'll be exhausted, you just want to sit and relax after a hard day's work, eat, and so on. So there is wisdom in why Allah chose different times for us to pray. And that is what we have to try and remember and try and understand. Because if we save them all for the end of the day, and you have to do that on a daily basis, you aren't going to keep up with it for long. You are going to have to, you will stop, because it's just too much on the body to remember to do them all at the end of the day. And actually, when I got married and moved country, I was praying properly, because I was in a Muslim dominated country. But I knew many people who did save them for the end of the day, especially sisters, for some reason, who wore a lot of makeup, because they can't, to wash it all off and to put it on again. So they just used to pray at the end of the day. And this is also not ideal. If you're going to wear makeup, wear very little, and then you don't have that issue whatsoever. So, just little steps like that can help. Or you can bring the wipes, to wipe your face. And then if you really, some women I know, they feel more confident wearing it. This is not anything to do with wearing makeup on. I'm not going to take it into that, because I think that's up to the sister to decide whether she wants to wear it or not. But instead of waiting till the end of the day and praying 5 prayers or at least 3 or 2 with Maghrib and Aisha, then the best thing you can do is, if you do wear some makeup, buy those wipes to wipe it off, and then you can give your face a good rinse, and then you can, if you really need to, reapply it after that, so that it's just easier on you, and that you're not neglecting your prayer because you're wearing a face full of makeup. Because you've got to try and put in your head, you know, when you are standing in front of Allah, how will you explain that? How will you justify that? So this is another thing what we have to try and remember in certain situations. I mean, Allah is all merciful, and we know that, but he said he will ask us first about our prayer. So we have to do what we can to perfect our prayer as much as we can. Of course, he knows we're human and we'll make mistakes as well, but we shouldn't keep making the same mistake or making it harder for ourselves, that we miss them, or that, you know, we don't end up praying them on time. So what can we do to develop the routine of praying our 5 daily prayers? Here are 6 tips. The first is know what you are reciting, especially for those of us who are not Arabic speakers and are maybe new to Islam. If you don't know what you're reciting, of course, you're going to find it difficult to pray because you have no idea what you're saying. So you need to know the meaning of what you are saying. You need to know the meaning of you know, a few ayah in the Quran, so you understand what you are saying to Allah, and you need to try and do this as much as you can, or as quick as possible. Of course, I don't mean the whole Quran, and I know that learning another language is very difficult, especially the Arabic language. It is a very hard language to learn, despite what so many people tell me. It really is a very difficult language. And what you can do is, my tip is just choose a couple of the shorter surahs at the end of the Quran, get to know them in English or your own language first, and then learn how to say them, so that when you pray, you can say them with Al-Fatiha, and then, for example, Al-Ikhlas, you know, these very short ones at the end. You can say them and you can learn them. And Al-Ikhlas is a very good one to learn or to start with, because it's such a powerful surah anyway, that if you repeat it 3 times, it's like you've said the whole Quran. So mashallah, it's a really good surah to learn. And the whole message of Islam is in just that one surah. So you can try and learn just that one if you are struggling with Al-Fatiha, and you can just say it every time. No one going to tell you otherwise, because no one knows what you're praying unless you are praying with people. And then what I do, and I try to do this as much as possible, is I always get someone else to lead. If I'm with sisters and we pray together, I'm never doing that. I will pray with them. I'm not going to be the lead of the prayer. And obviously, if you stood with many of your sisters, one of them is going to lead you in prayer anyway. And of course, there's always the option to pray alone. So you can pray, just learn that one surah and just repeat it until you're ready to move on to another one. So knowing what you are saying in prayer and understanding it makes it easier to develop a bond with this very important act of worship. And of course, it also helps you connect with Allah a lot better. So just try and learn the meanings of them, and allow yourself the time you spend in prayer to be even more beneficial, because you understand what you are saying, obviously. It's very difficult when you don't understand what you're saying. So that's why that is the first tip. Maria is struggling to learn Arabic. Me too, Maria. I've learned a little bit, but it takes time, and I learn so much and then stop, and then learn so much and then stop, just to give my brain a break, because it can be very tiresome and it can be very difficult. And obviously, if you're leading a busy life as well, if you're a mother, if you're working and all this, you don't always have the time, as much as we would love, to learn more than what we can. And as non-Arabic speakers and new Muslims, we have to learn a lot. So it can be overwhelming if you just suck it all in, because what's the point? You really need to understand what you're doing and what you're saying, and why we have to do this and why we have to do that. So my advice, Maria, is try and learn, if you don't already. I'm just assuming, and forgive me if you already know. Try and learn Al-Fatiha and one surah. And my recommendation is Al-Ikhlas. Just keep practicing with those, understand what is Al-Ikhlas in English, and then learn it in Arabic. And then once you've mastered it, then you can choose one of the other shorter surahs and so on. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Don't put any time frames to do this, that, or the other. It all comes with time. And, you don't want to start to hate it. This is what I mean. So it's really important to just take your time with it. Go at your own pace. Don't let anybody else pressure you, and just do as much as you can. Allah knows, because he knows you're a new Muslim, and he knows that you are from England, so Arabic is very difficult. So he's going to reward you anyway for all the effort that you're putting in, and he knows your intention. But just try and learn Al-Fatiha and one small surah, and just keep it at that for a while, and just go at your pace. Just don't let anybody put any pressure on you whatsoever. We all learn at different paces. I've been a Muslim for a long time now, and even me, I'm not knowing this many surahs in Arabic, because it takes time to learn them, and it's difficult. And even the Arabic in the Quran is very different to the Arabic we may hear from on a day-to-day basis if we have spouses who are Arabic speakers, or if we're living in Arabic-speaking countries. It's completely different. And often my husband says to me, he usually says to me, even Arabic speakers don't know how to speak the proper Arabic that's written in the Quran. So even they can sometimes have issues. So try not to worry too much, and just do what you can, and ask Allah to help you. The second tip is to plan your day. You know that you have to pray 5 times a day. So when you know that, and you know where you're going to be during those prayer times, this will help you be a little bit more prepared. Of course, in Fajr, inshallah, you'll be nowhere else but your house. So that should be easy enough to wake up and pray. And maybe you're in someone else's house, but at that time in the morning, no one's going to be up and really bothering you too much. So it's easy enough to do Fajr. We have to recite Al-Fatiha in the opening prayer, Rizal. So she has to understand that, and she has to know it in Arabic, of course. It's in every prayer. So know where you are, know where you will be. So if you're going to be out around the time of Dhuhr or Asr, that's a good time. That usually you're out in these days, maybe Maghrib, these times. Usually Dhuhr and Asr will be when you're at work or at school. So in this case, you can ask to be excused or given a break to pray. You can use your break times as well, of course, to pray. If you are out shopping or doing errands or commuting, or I don't know, anything like this, make sure to know if there is a local mosque or prayer facility in the area where you will be. If you're commuting, maybe you can stop off if you know there's one on your way. If you are shopping or anything, sometimes shopping malls in big cities, and I'm talking now, of course, about Western countries or countries that do not have the majority of Muslims living there. Obviously, if you're living in a Muslim majority country, alhamdulillah, you're blessed, because wherever you're going to go, you're going to find a place to pray. In the Western countries, it's much harder. So see what's there. I mean, sometimes in the big cities, in the malls, they have prayer areas, like multi-faith areas, but you can use them. If you're at the airport, for example, they have, I know in Heathrow, they have a multi-prayer area. But if you are, for example, in the malls, I think there is a prayer area in the Trafford Centre in Manchester. If you are in England and you're around there, I think they have one in there. But sometimes they do have little prayer rooms where you can pray if you are in a mall. If not, make sure that you are near an Islamic centre or a mosque. But if not, try and find just a quiet place where you will be able to do it. Plan your day around the prayer. Not plan the prayer around your day. So that makes it a bit easier. So obviously, Aisha, as well, usually you're going to be in the house. It's late at night, especially if you are in summertime. But if you are out visiting family or friends, you know, you might want to let them know beforehand, or I'll have a prayer to pray. So I will have to go and do that. That's entirely up to you. But just remember to plan your day around the prayer. The third tip is be prepared. When you are out and about, make sure you have what you need to pray. Carry one of those travel prayer mats, you know, the ones that fold up. They are perfectly folded when you first get them in a nice little cover, and then you take them out, you pray for the first time. You can never, ever, 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 ever fold them to the way that they were, can you? These kind of things. You can take this travel mat with you, or even if you have one in the house, you can just take it with you. But these smaller ones are ideal and practical, because for sisters, you can put them in the bag. For brothers, if you're married, you can ask your wife to put it in her bag. This is what usually happens with men, right? Everything they carry, they ask their wife to carry in their bag. Or you can just leave it in the car if it's easy for you to pop and get, or, you know, whatever. So just make sure that you do have a travel prayer mat. Make sure, if you're not yet wearing hijab, for the sisters, if you're not wearing hijab, make sure you have one, or, you know, some covering if you're wearing trousers, so that you can cover around the bottom half. Try and keep your wudu, but this is difficult, obviously. If you can't keep it, then you can't keep it. But make sure you plan that if you haven't kept your wudu, make sure you plan that you will need to do wudu as well. Okay? How else can you remember the prayer times? Set the alarms on your phone. Nowadays, we have so many apps, don't we, that we can download onto our phone to remember prayer times, and they often come with an azan to remind us. I have one on my phone that I downloaded, which is called Azan, actually. You can look on Google Play if you have an Android, and probably, I'm not sure what the shop is on iTunes. If you have an iPhone, is it iTunes? I don't know. I've never had an iPhone. I always have Androids. But I'm sure you know what I mean. You can go on there and you can download similar apps. We were talking about this in our group the other day, actually, what apps people have. Pro-Muslim, I think, is one. I'm not sure. But, you know, you can download these kind of apps. I'm sure you all know what I mean. The one I have is called Azan. So it goes off at the certain prayer times and wherever I am. And I can choose what Azan I like. So mine at the minute is one from Mecca. But you can choose. And then you have dua on there. You have all sorts of different things as well. It's not just for the Azan. But you can use these and set them on your prayer time so that you never forget to pray, no matter where you are. And they're really handy, actually. So phones are good, aren't they, when you use them right? For those of you struggling to pray, maybe you've just started to pray regular, or you are new Muslim, keep a daily checklist. And this is a really important thing to do. So if you have just started to pray, or you are a new Muslim and you're learning, keep a checklist. So at the end of the day, you can tick off which prayers you've done, and then you will see which ones you miss. And then if there is a time that you are constantly missing, you can have a think and have a look at to why am I missing this one, or why am I struggling to keep up with this particular prayer. I think most people probably will struggle with Asr, and even Allah says at this time, because it's a time when everyone is very bit, this is the time usually, depending where you are in the world and what season we are, it can be a very difficult prayer to catch. So if you're in winter, it's not too bad, because it's usually still probably whilst you're at work. I mean, here where I live, in winter, Asr is around between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. So obviously most people at this time, they're still going to be at work, so they'll be able to take a break and go and pray Asr. But as we get into summer, it starts to get later and later. Now Asr is at 22, or I think it's 20 past 4, around that time. But as we start getting more and more into summer, because our clocks went forward this weekend, so, as we're getting into May, June, July, Asr is going to be much later on in the afternoon, towards 5 or 6 o'clock. And this is the time when many people usually are leaving work. So it can be difficult for them on the commute home to pray. So just make sure that you know, again, that, where are you going to be around that time? If you're near home, that's okay. You can go and pray at home. If you're not, and you have a long commute and you might miss Maghrib, it's better maybe to stay at work and pray, or at least find a place on the way home so you can pray it. Of course, the shortness between Maghrib and Isha is difficult as well, because sometimes Maghrib is at 5 o'clock in the winter time, and you need to get home so you don't miss Isha. You need to pray that so you don't miss Isha. It's the same concept. But as we go into summer, especially in Western countries, Maghrib is much later on. I mean, we're talking now Maghrib, because the clocks just went forward. So Maghrib now is almost 7:30 here. But you are talking like later on in the summer, Maghrib can be 9:30, and then Isha is 10. And so on. So usually you are at home at those times, but it is those awkward points in the year, like season changes, that you have to try and catch them. So it could be down to a timing issue, and if it is, you need to try and work out ways you can avoid missing it. If it's Fajr, there are tips on how you can manage Fajr, and maybe I shall do that one in another week, tips to wake up for Fajr. But in the meantime, just make sure you have alarms set for that time, and also that for Fajr, because it's really important that if you do miss it, you won't pray it as soon as you wake up. Don't leave it. As soon as you wake up, pray Fajr. If you don't pray it regular at the time you should, just pray it as soon as you wake up, and then you're not missing it either. But we'll do another live session on how we can not miss Fajr, because it's very important, it's very important anyway, but especially in Ramadan, because you'll need to wake up anyway to eat suhoor. So you can't miss Fajr, obviously, otherwise you won't be able, or you'll be fasting very long without eating, suhoor as well. And the final thing that you can do is make dua. Constant dua to Allah to make prayer a solid part of your life. Routines are often hard to develop, and once we have developed, the key is then consistency. So if we ask Allah, He's going to help, and you make that dua to let Him constantly help. To make constant dua to let Him make prayer a solid part of our life. It's really important. We have to give prayer the status it deserves, because it will obviously help our bond and connection with Allah, and that's what's really important. So do try, just make dua to Allah first and foremost, have the right intention in your heart, because Allah knows, and then just try and remember that, it is so important. It's the first thing we're going to be asked about on the Day of Judgment. So we do want to try and get it right as much as possible. But one other thing I want to let you know is, don't feel too harsh, or don't be too harsh on yourself if you do forget to pray. Just as soon as you remember, pray. So if you are rushing around and you forgot to pray Asr, And then you get home and it's Maghrib and you've prayed Maghrib, and then suddenly you remember, I haven't prayed Asr. Pray it as soon as you remember, because this is what Allah tells us to do anyway. If you've forgotten, unintentionally you've forgotten to pray, just pray as soon as you remember. Allah knows, and just seek forgiveness. Allah will forgive you. If you keep missing them because you're finding it difficult to get into a regular routine, or there's other things that's stopping you from praying, just ask Allah to help you. Keep seeking forgiveness from Him, and He will help you. He knows what's in your heart, brothers and sisters. So if He knows that you're really trying to keep up with your prayer, and you're just really struggling with it, turn to Him, and He's going to help you. Ask Him His forgiveness about why you keep missing them, and just ask Him constantly for forgiveness, and ask Him constantly to help you, and with time you will see an improvement. So don't be too hard on yourselves and think, oh, Allah will never let me into paradise. I haven't prayed. I'm a rubbish at praying. I'm really bad at it. This is shaitan. Allah tells us many times that, when we do mistakes, we should turn to Him. So if you're really struggling, He is the one that you should turn to, and He knows that you're trying and making the effort, then He's going to make it easier for you. If you just sat there and then you're like, oh, I wish I'd prayed and I didn't pray, and you're not actually doing anything actively to help, then of course you're not going to get the help. So you do have to turn to Allah and repent, and remember Allah is merciful and He will help you. So just always remember that, brothers and sisters. So that is it for me on that topic. I hope it was really useful and beneficial, and I hope that you can use it and start practicing those techniques before we get to Ramadan. Because of course in Ramadan you want to be praying, and you want to make sure you pray on time, and you want to be making sure that you don't miss any prayer at all in Ramadan, or at least you don't even pray late in Ramadan, because of course the amount of hasanat we get for every single good thing that we do is multiplied by 10 in Ramadan. So we really, is it 10? I can't remember now. You'll have to let me know in the comment. But we do get lots more hasanat in Ramadan. So it's really important to develop the habit from now. So start from today, that habit. Okay, assalamu alaikum, Rizal, it's late where he is, so he's gone to bed. Inshallah, you will have a good night's sleep. So, brothers and sisters, try now, as all of us, even those of you who, mashallah, you're doing your prayers 5 times a day, and you're trying to do them on time and all this, all of us can improve our prayer in some way or another. So let's try from now, and so that when Ramadan comes, we feel that we are in a good routine. We're not going to miss prayer. We're not going to pray them late. We're going to really understand what we're doing when we're in prayer, and so on. So that our connection with Allah feels good, and it's strong, and it's positive, and we'll get the benefit from the prayer in and out of Ramadan. Because if you establish the prayer now and you do it really well all the way through Ramadan, there's no reason why it should stop after Ramadan. Of course, we're human, and maybe it will slightly falter, but at least to just make sure you're praying, the 5 times a day. This is what's really important. So, brothers and sisters, that's it from me this week. Join me next week as we talk about something else to help us prepare spiritually for Ramadan, as it's approaching very fast, and before we know it, it's going to be on us. So may Allah help us all reach Ramadan, Ameen. And may Allah bless you all, brothers and sisters, with all the goodness and their health and the long life and the blessings for this week. I hope to see you all next week, inshallah. Have a good week. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.